Hey, it's Kirby Myers, and you're listening to Behind the Blonde. So, last week on the first episode, the launch episode, I gave you guys a lot of information. I sort of had to summarize the last 7 years of my life, which so much has happened from divorce to remarriage, from addiction to sobriety, from feeling lost to opening my dream business, from eating disorders to finally loving myself. And as we move forward throughout the season, we're going to dive deep into specific topics, but I feel like it's really important to talk about my story of addiction and how it led to where I'm at now, which is almost 5 years alcohol and nicotine free. So that was the moment in my life deciding to remove alcohol for good that really put me on the trajectory that I'm now on. This was originally a column Behind the Blonde. So writing was something that really saved me when I first gave up drinking. I highly recommend anybody out there that's sober curious or questioning their relationship with alcohol, even if it's something that you want to try for a week or a month, write down how you're feeling. Mentally, honestly, was more of the compelling reason for me to give up drinking. I mean, physically, I felt like shit, don't get me wrong, but mentally, the anxiety was crippling. So I looked back at something that I wrote when I was pretty deep into it, when I came into the knowing, as I called it, the knowing that I was not okay, the knowing that I had a problem, but I wasn't quite ready yet. I would face myself in the mirror every night and lie to myself that I wasn't going to drink again. I wrote this when my kids were really young and I was in my full knowing of having a problem. I call it my trifecta: booze until I'm just properly buzzed, a little marijuana, or the dope, as my mom calls it, and about 4 or 5 cigarettes along the way. My nighttime ritual was my porch time. It was my me time. During both pregnancies, I would stop partying, of course, only to inevitably find myself back in the same place after having each kid. Who could you be if you just stopped? I asked myself this question more times than I can recall. At first, it was more of a curiosity. Who could this person looking in the mirror grow to be? Then, as time passed, it became a nightly anguish, a pain so deep, a reflection in the glass staring back at me. After steam showering off the stench of booze and cigarettes and aggressively brushing my teeth before crawling into bed, a woman I no longer knew, a woman I didn't want to be. I needed to stop. With nobody the wiser, I could feel my body changing, my skin dehydrating, my energy levels decreasing, my patience thinning, and worst of all, the huge imaginary bat I would mentally beat myself up with when the evening wrapped and it was time to crawl into bed. Knowing I'm a high-functioning substance abuser. Knowing I hate myself in this moment. Sitting on the toilet, concentrating way too hard on trying to pee, because even though I know I have to, for some reason the effects of the trifecta make it difficult to start the stream. The riddled anxiety and shame, asking myself, why did I do this again? When I told myself this morning I wouldn't. I would take the night off and get to bed early, knowing I'll sleep like crap, but when I wake up in the morning, I'll rush into my kids' room with a smile, play with them, make them breakfast, get them off to school on time, and be productive, at least what I thought productive was back then. And of course, tell myself tonight I won't drink, only to find myself inevitably pouring one around 6 p.m. just to take the edge off. And let's be real, as I've stated already, it was never just one. But I know deep down I want to be better. I can be better, more present, more full, more aware, more alive. I never could moderate my drinking. From as long as I can remember, I was never that girl that just had a glass of wine with dinner. Oh, how lovely that would have been. I had 3 brothers, and I always wanted to beat the boys. For as long as I could remember growing up, I had to run faster, jump higher, and that subsequently translated as we got older into wanting to go drink for drink with them. And they were big guys. They could handle their drinks. So I remember one night when I think I was 19 or 20, we were back in the guest house of my parents' house in New Hampshire, and we had 15 Bacardi shots. 15. And I sort of laugh and smile, not because I'm proud of myself, but I'm just thinking, what was I thinking? How did I not end up on the floor in a pool of vomit? How did I not get my stomach pumped? And that was the weird thing. I could always handle so much liquor. It was unbelievable. I'm not saying I didn't get fucked up from the floor up. I'm just saying the amount of alcohol I could put down was crazy. I mean, I was the girl that was always dancing on the tables. Hell, I remember getting kicked out of the same club in Boston at one of my girlfriend's birthdays 3 different times and somehow convincing a different bouncer or a different doorman to let me back in until I got kicked out again. I just could never stop. I never wanted the party to end. And when it did end, I would always find myself back on a porch drinking alone, having 1 or 2 more drinks, a few more cigarettes, having a bowl to take me down. I was a Marlboro Red 100 smoker, by the way. I am what you would call an extremist. But when I had children, of course, I switched to light blue American spirits because, that was obviously the healthier choice. So I did end up getting in a really bad car accident when I was 19, and I was wasted. It's one of those moments I'll always think about for the rest of my life. Why I didn't pick up the phone and call my father. It was the end of a long shift at work. I was exhausted, but it was late, and I'd been drinking a lot. And he's the kind of guy I could have called in the middle of the night, told him, Dad, I need a ride. And he would have jumped out of bed, gotten me, not been mad, not punished me, not given me shit. He would have been proud of me. He would have said, Kirby, good job. Thanks for calling, doing the right thing. But I did not call him that night. And my head through a windshield at 90 miles per hour. Thank God I did not hurt anybody else. A passerby pulled over, got me out of the car, and I got glass in my eye. Shudder to think about that still. Needed stitches in my eye. I broke my nose. I had staples in my leg. But I had convinced this guy who stopped to call my dad. I knew that if I got in the ambulance, they would take my blood alcohol level and I would be screwed. I'd be going to jail. So I convinced him to call my dad. I convinced my dad that I had just fallen asleep at the wheel, that I was tired. He drove me to the hospital. I got there, and 4 hours later, they took my blood alcohol level, and it was a 0.28, which we all know 0.08 is the legal limit. So the doctors at that point pulled my parents aside and said, hey, I think your daughter has a drinking problem. She was able to convince you at the scene, the paramedics, the cops, everybody that, she wasn't drinking. And obviously she was. So that should have been a turning point for me for sure, but it wasn't. But back in that day too, drinking heavily was kind of a rite of passage. I wasn't a big drinker in high school, but once I graduated, we moved up to New Hampshire. I got in with kind of a bit of a rough crowd, experimented with a lot of things. Luckily, nothing really stuck but the drinking. And I loved to just party my ass off. And I wouldn't do it every day, but when I did it, I really did it. Back then, it was like if you didn't at least brown out, let alone blackout, you didn't have a good night. I mean, everybody would wake up the next morning, you'd swap stories, and oh my God, I forgot I did that. Oh shit. It was just kind of everybody drank a lot. It was not like today where people realize it's so bad for you. I'm so grateful. That's one of the, I think, best things about raising my kids in this generation. While there's so many other horrible things going on, we know now how bad alcohol is for you. And we always knew then, but they glamorized it, right? I mean, you looked at any of your favorite TV shows or your favorite characters, they always had a glass of wine in their hand, a second. And did you notice they never got drunk? Their voice never slurred. Their eyes never closed. It was like they could just have their drinks and go on, and it was totally fine. It was marketed to us. It was just kind of what you did. I mean, Thirsty Thursday was a thing. I'd have a beer and a shot. I loved my tequila. So I'd get a chilled Patron shot and a Miller Lite, and I'd make my rounds and kind of prowl and see if there was any cute guys. So that was like drinking for me then. I always was excessive. I was always an extremist. But I always went to work. We actually had family restaurants. I was the manager. I was very responsible. I always showed up, very on top of it. And then I moved to Key West after we closed those at 26. And shortly after, I met my now ex-husband. He was 19 years older than me. Also a big drinker, but he had a big job, traveled, went to work, took care of a lot of things. And he courted me for a while. This wasn't like love at first sight. But there was something about him that was charming and alluring, and I finally gave in. And he was the guy that had a record player in every room. He loved music. He could cook, loved to cook, entertain, would play jazz. Sunday mornings, we'd wake up and he'd present me with a chilled glass of Moët, and he'd prepare this big brunch, and we'd have people over and we'd go swimming. And it was just, I was kind of caught up in this whole lifestyle. And at that time, drinking was really fun. But when I got to Key West, drinking was the lifestyle, right? I mean, it's like Neverland here, or it can be. Now, 14 years later that I've been on the island, there are so many people that have removed alcohol. There's such a big sober community or alcohol-free community, and it's awesome to see. But at the time, that wasn't really here. It was kind of everything you did was around drinking. Even, what later when I became a mom, birthday parties. I was like, what's this? There's a birthday party at the park and everyone's having mimosas like at 10 a.m. This is crazy. But then eventually you have the mimosa and it becomes normal. So it was at first just a really fun kind of thing. I was working in the bars. I ended up getting a job at a radio station down here because I'd been working on air up in New Hampshire. So I wanted to continue that. And then we got pregnant. And then he proposed. And we ended up getting married when my son was 5 months old. So we got married in my parents' backyard in New Hampshire. It was this intimate wedding, like 60 people. That's all I wanted. My mom, a non-drinker. Both of my parents don't drink. So that was kind of interesting too. My dad's mom was an alcoholic though. And very tragically, he dropped dead of a heart attack in front of her at 20. So I think that because of that, she just never drank. She stayed away from it. And then my dad met her, and so he didn't drink either. So it was really interesting that me and my 2 younger brothers were kind of always big drinkers. So when we got married, I knew my mom was taking care of the baby. I look back, there's certain things in life that I've forgiven myself for, but I still shudder a little bit when I reflect. And that's one of them. I don't have a single picture of me and my son at the marriage of me and his father. And that's sad. I mean, my priority was drinking with the girlfriends, getting ready, starting at noon. I had a shot before I walked down the aisle. Oh my God. My college roommate, titties. We called each other titties. Don't ask. That's another story. But she came and we used to love doing body shots. I only went to college for 1 semester, but I made a mark. And I remember I pulled my dress up at my wedding where my 5-month-old son was, and she did a body shot off of me. I mean, what? I was crazy. I was crazy. But if you asked any of the guests, they were probably like, oh, she was fine. Kirby was having a blast. She was the life of the party. But I was the last man standing. Everybody went to bed, even my husband at the time. And I was with my girlfriend, Amelia. We were sitting by the fire. And I was still drinking, still having my cigarettes at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I had my daughter pretty quickly after that. They're 2 years apart. It was after I had her when the knowing started to creep in, when the fun drinking became, oh, wow, I'm depressed. I think something's going on here. This is not okay. I need to drink every night to get through the day. I'm thinking about having that drink. I have anxiety. I'm lonely. My marriage was one that I had realized after the facade had faded of being swept up into just this lifestyle and going, okay, now we're a family unit and I have these 2 tiny kids. While he was a provider, he was gone all the time. And I was met with the very harsh reality of being so fucking lonely. I was so lonely. And I was in this huge house, this gorgeous house, these 2 beautiful kids. I loved being a mom. We would go all the time on our little adventures. And I would sometimes take off for 6 hours a day in the double stroller and just go roam around Key West. And the night would come and I had a really good tight-knit group of girlfriends. We all had kids around the same age. Every Thursday they would come over. We'd do somebody's house. A lot of times it was our house because it was a great entertaining house. And we'd all have drinks and the kids would play, but then they would go home and I would put the kids to bed and I'd go retreat to the porch and I'd keep drinking. And that was the thing I didn't talk about. That was the thing that they didn't know. They knew Kirby could drink. They knew I loved to drink, but they didn't know that I was still drinking 2 hours after they left by myself. So I would sit with that on the porch and I would know this is not okay. So I realized I've got to fix this. This is not who I want to be. I was showing up every day. I had, a community, friends. I was on the radio. Life seemed amazing, but I was dying inside and something had to give. So we were in therapy, my husband and I at the time. And I remember the moment that I really knew it was over was when the therapist asked us both, what's the one thing you really need from the other person in this relationship? And I remember thinking, this is easy. I need a partner. I need a cheerleader. I need a best friend. I need somebody who sees me. And he turned to my ex and said, well, what do you need? And he said, I wish she would spend less time taking the kids on her adventures and more time tending to the house. You want to talk about a polarizing moment. I mean, that's really when I knew it was over. Shortly after that, I wrote something actually like just in the notes on my phone. So many people kind of knew me in town and I had sort of a reputation of this life and entertaining. And I felt like a con artist in a way. And I was also just really struggling with how do I go on like this? I need to say it out loud. I need to be able to breathe. I felt suffocated. So I just one afternoon felt inspired and wrote something on my phone. And I remember it started, hi, I'm Kirby. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a radio DJ. And the next line said, hi, I'm Kirby. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. And I drink more than I should. And it went on from there. And I realized that I needed to put it out publicly. I just felt compelled to. There was just something inside me that said, I have to put this out there. And shortly before that, I had gone to my husband at the time and I had told him that I had a drinking problem. I told him that I needed help. I had called Betty Ford. I had looked into a 30-day rehab program. I knew that he would, with his travel schedule, we would need help. So the conversation initially went really well. We came back to the house and I asked him to call my parents with me. And he never really had a close or great relationship with my parents. But I said, can we call them together? I was just really nervous to call them. And I said, hey, guys, I need your help. I need you to come down here and I need you to take care of the kids. I'm going to go to rehab and I need to do this. I have a problem. And everybody agreed. We had a plan. And shortly after that, I had brought it up to my husband again, and he sort of dismissed it, sort of poo-pooed it. And I had like a full-on panic attack. I stopped breathing. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? So I had written this column, and I had seen that the local newspaper had like an ad on the back of it that said, we're hiring. And I just thought, oh, cool, for like writers. So I reached out and inquired, and I got a call or a text. I got a text from the publisher of the paper. He was somebody that I knew but didn't know super well. I'd interviewed him on my radio show before. And he said, hey, he thought I was looking for a sales position. And I said no, because I did sales at the radio station as well as being on air. I said, no, I'm not looking for a sales position. I actually wrote something and thought maybe you'd be interested in putting it in the paper. And he said, well, do you want to meet for coffee? And I said, I'd love to. So we met for coffee, and there was this crazy instant connection. And I had felt it when I interviewed him at the radio station about 8 months prior. We just kind of talked and flowed, and it was really easy and seamless. But I never put more thought into it because I was married with 2 small kids and I had a lot going on. I was actively in therapy with my husband. It was just something that I kind of put aside. And then at that point, flash forward, we're sitting there for coffee and I hadn't shown this to anybody. And I really didn't know this guy from Adam. And I handed him my phone and I said, here it is. And I ran in the bathroom and I hid while he read it. Like a little dodo. And I came out and he went, this is amazing. I want to publish this and I want to create a column out of it. And I said, well, okay, let's call it Behind the Blonde. So That's now my husband. But I'm going to leave you with that for today. We'll finish up next week. Thanks for tuning in to Behind the Blonde. I'm Kirby Myers.